Yo, what is going on, everybody? We're back with another ranking video. Starting it off again with the running backs. It's going to look very different than it did last week. We finally have actual data to go off of, so I'll be talking a little bit about that in this video. But I also want to remind everybody that week one normally is not very indicative of what the rest of the season will look like. So a lot of stuff that happened this week isn't going to be what happens the rest of the season. But at the same time, we can't ignore what we saw. So it's kind of a give and take, and you kind of have to decide what you think is real and what isn't. And if everybody knew, then we'd be working in the NFL. So I'm going to be giving you guys my opinions on it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like on this video. Also make sure to subscribe to this channel. Got content coming all year for the fantasy season. And let's get right into it. Okay, so first up, we got Jonathan Taylor. Pretty obvious. He had 31 attempts last week, had 160 rushing yards. Just showed to be the Jonathan Taylor we saw last year as an absolutely dominant force. Not much really to be said here. He's kind of in his own tier. And these first couple guys I'm going to go through pretty quickly. Like I said in last week's videos, these top guys you're kind of playing regardless, so I don't really need to dive into a lot of detail with them. Up next, we're going to have Christian McCaffrey. He didn't have quite the game we're used to, still got in the end zone, and I'm sure as the offense gets more and more used to each other, he'll get more work. He's still one of the best talents we've ever seen in the running back position and is completely matchup proof while also going up against the New York Giants, which isn't a great team. So I'm going to have him at my running back 2. After that, it's going to be another person who had a relatively disappointing week. That's Austin Eckler. He still played almost double the amount of snaps of any other running back on the team. There's still that elite offense, and he's one of the best pass catching running backs in the NFL. So an elite talent that you're starting every single week. Austin Eckler at running back 3. Another person in that exact same boat is Dalvin Cook. I'm having him at my running back 4. He had 20 rushes last week and looked really good on the field, just didn't get in the end zone and didn't get quite enough receiving work to be elite. Justin Jefferson was just scoring from way too deep out, but Dalvin looked like himself, and that offense seems like it could take a step forward this year. And I'd go put out some feelers for a trade target on Dalvin or any of these guys, really. If you can get these guys for even on a slight discount, then I'm taking that every single time. These guys I believe will be elite all year. And the last person I have in this tier is somebody who surprised us and looks like he's back to his old self and was running back 1 in week 1, and that's Saquon Barkley. Now, I don't know if he'll be staying up around this tier and these top 5 the entire year. We'll kind of have to see, but he sure looked like himself. I mean, he pretty much won the entire game for them. Had more rushing yards than Jonathan Taylor on almost half the amount of attempts. They just don't have a very good offense, so it's hard for him to keep up that production every single week, but it looks like the offense is going to run through him, and he doesn't seem to be held back by any injuries at all right now. They're also playing Carolina, which showed not to be a very good defense, especially against the rush. So I'd feel even better about that. That's why I have him in the second tier, but Saquon Barkley is my running back 5. All right, moving on to the next tier, my running back 6, I'm going to have Joe Mixon. They were in a really weird game last week, which went to the end of overtime, so it's hard to take a lot of data away from that just because the numbers can be kind of skewed, but he still got 8 targets, which if he can get 5 targets a game, he's going to easily be in this elite tier of running backs. On top of that, he saw 27 rushing attempts, and the offense didn't look quite as good as it did last year, but I think that they'll figure that out as the year goes on. And with this volume on this good of an offense, he's easily in this tier. So I got Joe Mixon in my running back 6. After that, I'm going to be having Derrick Henry at my running back 7. He wasn't very productive last week, but that can definitely happen with him. He still got his 21 attempts, but he didn't do anything at all in the receiving game and was not very efficient with those rushes. But given his talent and the volume that he's going to be getting, he's still going to be up here. But he also has a really, really hard matchup against Buffalo this week. That's why I have him in this lower tier and behind Joe Mixon, but still just too elite of a talent to not have in your lineup. Up next, I have DeAndre Swift. They were going up against the Washington Commanders, which didn't really have a great defense against Jacksonville last week. And DeAndre Swift just looked like one of the best running backs in the NFL. If he could get the full volume, I think he could easily be in the tier 2s. But Jamal Williams got 2 touchdowns, a lot of red zone usage, but that's not enough to hold DeAndre Swift from being back here. He's still in on 46 snaps opposed to Jamal Williams 23, so he's obviously the clear back, and he's gonna get red zone work going forward. He won't get all of it, but he'll get enough to still be an elite running back. One of the first big plays of the entire day was DeAndre Swift on a 50-yard rush. He can, he's not going to, but he can do that any single day. So just all of those factors, I think he's pretty clearly in this elite tier of running back. After Swift, I have Javonte Williams. He saw 11 receptions, which I don't predict that happening every single week, but that volume is absolutely ridiculous. And he does look to be already the clear leading back in Denver. Now, it's not, a huge difference. Javonte played on about 58% of snaps, whereas Melvin, is about 42%. So it's not a big difference, but you can just see the talent is a significant difference at this point in their careers. And Javonte Williams is only going to take that role over more and more as the year goes on. They're also playing Houston this week, so a very friendly matchup. And I think that Javonte is going to absolutely dominate. And the last guy in this tier and who I have in my top 10 is Nick Chubb. They're playing the New York Jets, which is why I have him ranked in the top 10. Now, Kareem Hunt got both touchdowns last week, which is a big reason, why Nick Chubb isn't in that elite tier of running backs, because he is an elite talent. But depending on the game strip, that can happen every single week. I mean, Kareem Hunt played more snaps than Nick Chubb, but Chubb still had 22 attempts for 141 yards. So it's not like he's going to be bad for fantasy or anything. And I think that this is a game that they're going to be dominating and they'll be up and they just kind of want to run the ball out. So I think he's going to get a ton of work, and you're not benching him regardless. So Nick Chubb, last guy in this third tier of running backs, my running back 10. Moving on to the next tier, my running back 11, I have Leonard Fournette. They're going up against the New Orleans Saints, which is a tough matchup, but Lenny looked really, really good. He also got pretty much all of the work, so I'm not too worried about his workload at all. The offense didn't look quite as good as it has in the years past, but I think that they're going to figure it out. This is just a tough matchup for them. He also got hurt at the end of the game, but it sounds like he's fine, so nothing really to worry about there. He's going to get the bulk of this work, and he's looked great so far this year. So really strong running back option here, Leonard Fournette. My next running back is going to be the guy on the other side of the ball, Alvin Kamara, who he had a really down week last week, but it's nothing I'm really too worried about. This Tampa Bay defense, though, is really tough, so it could limit him some. And we also saw the limitations last week, and that was against the Falcons. So I've moved him down a little bit, but I think that he's still going to get the workload, and he's still a good enough talent where he'll be a solid running back option. Next up, my running back 13, I have Aaron Jones. They're going up against Chicago, which should be a pretty friendly matchup, and he kind of had a down week. AJ Dillon actually played more snaps than him, although I think Aaron Jones will still be the lead running back. They're definitely a lot closer than where they were being drafted, and I think that if we don't see the usage go up from last game, I think then we can start to be a lot more worried about Aaron Jones. But for right now, I think he's still going to be a great option. I mean, the entire Packers offense just kind of looked like shit, and I'm assume that they're going to figure that out, and a lot of that has to do with just getting Aaron Jones the ball, because he's a beast when he has it in his hands. Matt LaFleur even talked about that in the post-game press conference, so I assume that that's going to happen this week. If it doesn't, like I said, we'll worry about it more then, but I think it will, so I'm putting him right here, my running back 13. Now, on to the next tier of running backs, I have Najee Harris up against the Patriots. Now, Najee got hurt last week, and it sounded like he might not play this week, but I think he's actually going to. But he's been dealing with that Liz Frank in the offseason, so it could be related to that. They said that it's nothing too serious, but I'm definitely worried about it, and he didn't look all that great last week, but it could have been because of that. Who really knows? New England tends to be a pretty solid defense, although they weren't that great last week. Just given the Steelers' offensive line, kind of how they used Najee, I don't really see him being an elite option this week. And also that he's coming off an injury. I don't see him being an elite option this week, but hopefully he can just stay healthy, get through this game, and just get enough volume where he can be a running back too. After that, I have James Conner going up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders were able to hold Austin Eckler to a pretty quiet game, but I don't really think that's indicative of their defense. I think it was just kind of how the game played out. Although the Arizona offense also did not look very good, but James Conner definitely got most of the work, and I assume that he's going to this week as well. Another offense that I'm hoping can turn it around, we'll just kind of have to wait and see, but I think just given his volume, he can be a top 15 option. After that, I'm going to have somebody who looked really good, and that's Antonio Gibson. I'm a running back 16. They are going up against the Detroit Lions, so a matchup that they, again, should dominate, at least offensively wise. He was okay rushing the ball. I mean, he had those 14 opportunities, which is always good to see, but he had 7 receptions for 72 yards, which is really what you want to see. He also ran the 4th most routes on the team, which is very encouraging. And so I think as long as Brian Robinson is out, and maybe even once he's back, this is going to continue. No real reason to see that it's not. And a great matchup just makes me feel even more confident about him. So I'm going to have Antonio Gibson ranked here. The last person in this tier is AJ Dillon, who had more opportunity than Aaron Jones. He still looked really good, got in the end zone. And I don't think he's going to continue to get more opportunity, but I do imagine that it would be pretty equal. This is also a matchup against Chicago, which they could be winning. And if they're winning, trying to just run the clock out, I figure AJ Dillon will be on the field. So I think that he's going to be extremely extremely valuable for this week of football and could definitely continue to see more work and rise up the rankings as the year continues on. Moving on to the next tier, I first up have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which he looked really good. He didn't get a ton of work just because they were absolutely blowing out the Arizona Cardinals, so there's no real reason to keep him in, but the touches that he got, he looked super good. I figure that'll continue, although there's definitely some worry about it becoming kind of a three-headed backfield with Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco, but that's just going to be something we have to monitor going forward. For the time being, he's definitely the clear back, and if he looks as good as he did this past week, then he can easily be a running back 2 every single week, if not better. This should be a high-scoring matchup against the Chargers too on Thursday night, so a lot of opportunity for him to score. Feel pretty solid about having him ranked here. Next up, we have Cordarrelle Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons. He's another person that looks really, really good. Now, I just haven't really been a believer in him this entire offseason. I personally would be trying to trade him away if I had him. I just don't think at his age, he's going to be able to keep up this production throughout the entire year. It's exactly what happened last year. I just kind of think his legs are going to fall out from under him, but he could easily prove me wrong. And for the time being, he is going to be ranked in this area because he's getting all of the work. Now, they're playing the LA Rams, which should be a good matchup, although the Buffalo Bills kind of destroyed them, but I'm not comparing the Buffalo Bills and the Atlanta Falcons. So I do think it is a tough matchup, but he should get enough volume where he's going to be good. The Saints are also supposed to be a tough matchup, but he rushed for over 100 yards and was one of the first people to rush for over 100 yards on the Saints in a couple years. So he should be just fine, right, ranked right around here, and I'd be starting him in most leagues that I have. Now, the last guy I have in here is Ezekiel Elliott, who he definitely had to take a hit with Dak Prescott going down because their offense won't be as good, but he should still get enough volume where he's fine. And I think that, with a backup quarterback, a lot of times there's more dump off passes, which can lead to some more safety for the running back. So he's kind of being ranked here at the running back 20, just strictly based on volume, because I do not think that their offense is going to be good. But he looked good running the ball against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is one of the toughest defenses. I thought they should have just keep giving him the ball because he looked like that, but they didn't, and they lost. But again, what do I know? Anyways, though, I have him ranked here at my running back 20. Now, moving on to the last tier, the first guy I'm going to have ranked in this tier is Darrell Henderson. He showed to be a clear lead back in LA last Thursday night. He played 82% of the snaps for the team, which is elite workhorse numbers. I honestly doubt that he'll keep that up, but for the time being, he is a clear lead back in LA, and I will keep ranking him there until we see otherwise. And to be honest, I don't really see that changing. If anything, it'll just become kind of a 50-50 split, but I don't really see Cam Akers taking over this role unless an injury happens. This matchup against the Falcons, too, is pretty juicy, so he should have a good week. He could honestly probably be ranked higher than here, but just given the uncertainty with Cam Akers, I ranked him a little bit lower, but if the snap share continues how it was, then he's going to go way up these rankings. After that, I have Rashad Penny playing the San Francisco 49ers, which is a really tough matchup. Although the Seattle Seahawks definitely looked better than I think most people initially thought. And Rashad Penny looked really good. Although he wasn't extremely productive for fantasy, if you actually watched the game, he looked really good, explosive, decisive. I have him in a couple leagues, and I was really excited about the game. It didn't pan out great for him, but I'm definitely excited moving forward, just seeing what he looked like. And it doesn't sound like Ken Walker is going to be back, at least in the immediate future. So we'll definitely need to see how this breaks down. But for right now, I have him ranked here. After that, my running back 23, I have David Montgomery, who he had a really bad game against SF, but it's tough to take anything away from that game. It was just such like a torrential downpour. There was just really nothing you could take away from that. But we did see Khalil Herbert start to get work as the game progressed. Now we don't know exactly why that was, but he was definitely being more productive than David Montgomery. But Monty had the majority of the work and snaps still, so I don't see that changing, but it doesn't seem like he'll be getting the 80-90% of snaps that he has years past that made him a really good running back. We'll have to see how that changes in like a normal game, because like I said, that game was ridiculous, and taking anything away from it definitively is really tough for me, and I just want to see more. But I had to rank him a little bit lower just based off what I saw from Khalil Herbert and how those snaps broke out. If he goes back to the, like the 90% workload that he has been in the years past, he can kind of move back up towards that bottom end tier 5, tier 6. But for right now, I have him ranked here, my running back 23. Next up, my running back 24, I have Kareem Hunt. I talked about with Nick Chubb, they're playing the New York Jets, and I assume that they're going to be dominating since it's a really good matchup for them. Because of that, I don't really see Kareem being in the game as much, although he's one of those people that can kind of break it from anywhere. He had 2 touchdowns last week, so we saw how good he can still be. But that's not what I predict going forward every single week. It can kind of change week to week. This seems more like a Nick Chubb game to me, but Kareem is still going to get work regardless. So you're going to be playing him as a back end running back too, but I definitely temper my expectations from last week just because I don't think he's going to have the same workload that he had. And the last running back I want to talk about here, my top 25, is Miles Sanders. They're playing Minnesota, which is a pretty tough matchup, but they look like a really good offense. They're just using all of their running backs in Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and Miles Sanders, so I can't rank him any higher than this, but he definitely is a clear lead back there. Scored a touchdown last week and looked really good throughout the entire game, but he's just not going to get a big enough workload to be any higher than this unless somebody gets hurt. But if you need someone to play, you could do a lot worse than this. But yeah, here's my top 25. Let me know what you guys think about it, what you agree with, what you disagree with. There's always going to be stuff, so just let me know. Some guys right outside of this list, definitely Devin Singletary, Chase Edmonds are right outside of there. Travis Etienne and James Robinson are right outside of there. With them, we kind of just need to see more because Travis Etienne got all of the important work, got all the receiving work, got way more snaps, but James Robinson did not look how I think anyone thought. He looked really good and he scored 2 touchdowns, so I'm definitely worried about that. And I do think that Travis Etienne will take this job and kind of have it fully his, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be, an elite workhorse type of role for him. It looks like it could be a 50-50 split, 55-45 split. And we're just going to need more data going forward until I can definitively say. But I have him ranked right outside this area, and I'd still feel okay starting either of them, but not super excited about it. There we go. Thank y'all for sticking through. My wide receiver rankings should be coming out shortly after this, and then more videos coming out the rest of this week. If you have any ideas or questions for me, just leave them in the comments below. And until next time, later.